What is up, guys? Londrick here now, back with a brand new edition of Lundrick's Fave 5s, and as the title says, Fave 5 Smackdown moments. So with Smackdown 1000 just a few weeks away, I'm going to do a series of Fave 5 videos related to Smackdown, and the first one is going to be Smackdown moments. So before we get to Fave 5, let's rattle off a few honourable mentions. Obviously, honourable mention, Vince's speech after 9/11. I mean, obviously I'm not American, so I don't have the personal connection to this 9/11 thing that like all you Americans do. But I acknowledge it was a fantastic moment. And if I was American, this would probably be in the top 5 for sure. But I'm not American, so it's not, basically. Edge cashing in Money in the Bank against The Undertaker in 2007. Daniel Bryan's big return promo earlier this year. Even AJ Styles defeating Jinder Mahal for the WWE title in Manchester last year, when AJ Styles stayed from that awful title reign. So, enough of honourable mentions, let's get to the list. Coming in at number 5, and if I could describe this moment in 2 words, it would be holy shit. And that is, as you can see by the picture, Brock Lesnar versus The Big Show, Smackdown, June 2003, the infamous ring collapsing moment. Now granted, this has been done twice since then, but the first time we did it was absolutely awesome and a fantastic moment. So here we are in Smackdown 2003. The brand split had been around for about a little less than a year and a half by this point. Now I think it's fair to say during that time Smackdown was a superior brand. Yeah, in terms of stature and like in terms of how WWE saw things, Raw was number 1. I mean, it's always been that, and it's always going to be that. I mean, it's no secret that Raw is always going to be more of a bigger priority than SmackDown. But I feel like during this period, SmackDown was by far the superior brand, and one of the reasons was had Brock Lesnar on top of the star. So of course, Brock Lesnar's rise in 2002 was pretty epic. But one of his most underrated feuds ever was with The Big Show. So Big Show had been around for about 3 or 4 years by this point, and for the most part his WWE run had been a massive disappointment. I mean, when the giant Paul White signed with the WWF in 1999, expectations were absolutely huge. It was thought, under Vince McMahon's guidance, this guy's going to be a mega star. But it never quite worked out that way for various reasons: bad booking, bad timing, get heel turns, face turns, attitude problems from The Big Show, weight problems from The Big Show, injuries, etc. And then in 2002, no pun intended, a big opportunity arose for The Big Show when The Big Show got drafted over to SmackDown. He didn't get drafted, he got traded over to SmackDown, defeated the undisputed champion Brock Lesnar. And under Paul Heyman's booking, this was a really good feud. I mean, they did an awesome job of rebuilding The Big Show, and for whatever reason, Brock and Big Show just showed chemistry right off the bat, really. I mean, especially as characters, I mean, just really worked. And of course, The Big Show will go down as the first man to beat Brock Lesnar in a televised match when he ended his streak of Survivor Series 2002. And then after that, they kind of went their own separate ways. After a while, Big Show went on to feud with people like The Undertaker and that, and Rey Mysterio. And then Brock Lesnar went on to feud with Kurt Angle as a babyface, win the WWE title back at WrestleMania 19. And then in 2003, The Big Show and Brock Lesnar started feuding again. Obviously, because I feel like Big Show was a good opponent for Brock Lesnar at the time. They had a main event at Judgment Day 2003, a stretcher match. But the feud continued. Here we are into June. Another WWE title match between Brock Lesnar and The Big Show. Now, I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened on this SmackDown apart from this match. I mean, it has been, 15 years ago, or more than 15 years ago. And this match, it wasn't anything special or anything. I mean, it was a good TV main event and all that, but really, the match wasn't really much worth shouting about at all. It was a good match, granted, but you know, that wasn't what it was all about. So we get I guess it's come to the end of the match. They're going to do a superplex spot. Now, bear in mind, this is £500 Big Show and a near £300 Brock Lesnar. That's £800 on the ropes, and fuck, can you really superplex a guy like the Big Show? Well, Brock Lesnar did. He hit the superplex, and then bam, the ring just imploded. Yeah, the ring just imploded. An amazing scene, really. A shocking scene. The crowd was stunned. And an awesome call by Taz when he just simply went, "Holy shit!" I mean, wow. Great moment. A shocking moment, it really was. And probably one of the best endings to a WWE television show ever. Especially Smackdown. I mean, what a way to go off the air for a spectacular scene like that. I mean, obviously the match was then judged a no contest, but what a way to be a no contest. Now, granted, WWE has repeated this spot twice. They did it in 2011 with Mark Henry in the Big Show and Avengers. Then they did it on Raw in 2017 with Braun Strowman in the Big Show. But it'll never have the same impact or the shock value of the first one. I mean, I absolutely love this moment. I really do. And for me, more than worthy of its top 5. Coming at number 4, we continue with the original brand split in the Ruthless Aggression era. July 4th, 2002, Hulk Hogan and Edge win the WWE Tag Team titles. Now, what an awesome story this was. I mean, it really was an awesome moment. That was a great episode. Will it make the Fave 5 episodes? Maybe, maybe not. So a little bit of a backstory, of course. Hulk Hogan had been back in the WWE for a while now. Obviously, Hogan's comeback run was awesome in my opinion. I don't want to go into too much detail about that, like I might talk about that in detail in the future. But of course, Hogan had been away for a long time, 9 years. Like, he was originally in his prime, like 18, 15, 17 years ago. And you're thinking now he's in a roster with a new generation of talent. And you got to remember, this new generation of talent was probably grown up watching wrestling in the 80s, and Hogan was in his prime, and more than likely they were massive Hulkamaniacs, and one of those guys was Edge. So Edge was now a rising superstar in the WWE. I mean, after the brand split, he'd got a really good push feud with Kurt Angle and all that, and had a few great matches. Yeah, he just starts really on the rise. And for me anyway, personally, that was probably my favourite period of Edge's entire career. You know, I really loved Edge back then, because this was in my teenage years now, and I was just really getting behind Edge. But of course, so him and Hulk Hogan had shown some good on-screen chemistry. I mean, they did a few backstage segments together, and it just seemed like some of this really worked. It really work. And they did a thing on Smackdown, because Edge was injured for about 3 weeks in the run-up to the King of the Ring 2002 for shoulder injury, injured by Chris Jericho. And if I'm not mistaken, it was a Smackdown after the King of the Ring where Jericho was facing Hogan in the main event. And I think Jericho had Hogan in a vulnerable position. Maybe Kurt Angle was involved, I can't remember. This might have been Smackdown the Cena debut, actually, now I think about it. So then Edge makes his return to the WWE after 3 weeks off to save Hulk Hogan. And I was saying that Edge and Hulk Hogan had an alliance. So, the following week, July 4th, 2002, a match was put together for the WWE Tag Team titles. The champions, Billy and Chuck, against a team of Hulk Hogan and Edge. Now, just want to point out, obviously, July the 4th really means nothing to me. I mean, that's obviously Independence Day in America. It's a big deal and all that to Americans. But I'm English, so I couldn't really give a toss about July the 4th, to be honest with you. So, July the 4th has no significance or any meaning to me whatsoever. So, that's not really why I care about this moment so much. I'll explain in a minute. So, they have a match. It's a good TV match. I mean, it's nothing fancy or anything like that. But it's an entertaining enough TV match. I mean, I think once the bell rang, you knew who was going over here, really, weren't you, brother? So another cool aspect of this match for me. So on Hogan's 2002 comeback run, after he'd split for the NWO and gone back to the red and yellow, he didn't use Real American as his theme. I mean, he would after this, like when he came back in like 2005 to feud with Shawn Michaels and stuff like that. And even like after his 2014 return, he's pretty much always used Real American. But in 2002, he was using Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child theme song, which was a cool song and all, but it wasn't as iconic as Real American, was it? And does anyone hate the fact that WWE don't have the rights to Voodoo Child now? So every time you watch a Hogan match on the network from that era, they dub it with some awful theme song. Just me. So for the first time since he came back, he came down to Real American, and like I said, the match was good, but it was not special or anything like that. But a great finish though. Hogan and Edge both hit leg drops to win the WWE Tag Team titles. And the reason I really love this moment, like I say, I'm not American, so July the 4th has no significance to me, but I'm a wrestling fan, right? And I'm sure every wrestling fan could just relate to this. So Edge is a child, teenager growing up watching Hulk Hogan, being a massive Hulkamaniac, and then all these years later, here he is as an adult now, a team with Hulk Hogan. He's a tag team championship, his hero. I mean, how can you not be inspired by that story, really? And just look at the picture I've got here. You can just see the smile on Edge's face, just how happy he is, how much this moment meant to him. And I think it was really cool that Hogan got a tag team title at that stage of his career as well. I mean, I think that was really good. I think they made a really good team for the short amount of time that Hogan and Edge were together. I mean, obviously, Hogan was so over it wasn't even funny. So with Hogan in the match, they had the crowd heat no matter what. So like Edge and the opponents could do all the heavy lifting, all that, doing most of the work. Gets a tag, Hogan comes in, does his little spots, and that's about it really. But yeah, it's just an inspiring story of a wrestling fan growing up idolising a guy like Hulk Hogan, and here he is, however many years later, as his tag team champions with him. Just awesome moment, it really, really was. Absolutely loved it, and it's definitely worthy of being in the top 5. Now, coming at number 3, we're going back before the original brand split into 2001 in the build-up for WrestleMania 17. And that's the moment in Smackdown in March 2001 with the epic sit-down interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, moderated by Jim Ross in the build-up to the huge WrestleMania 17 main event. Now, obviously, this is we're coming towards the end of the Attitude Era now. It's been a phenomenal run. An incredible time in the business. I'm sure I've talked about that before. I'm sure other YouTubers have talked about it before. Well, I'm sure you all know and all heard of how great the Attitude Era was. I don't need to put it over any more than I need to here, but obviously at the time you had two mega icons, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. This is off the back of Stone Cold missing most of 2000 for neck injuries, and then The Rock really becoming an icon. And Stone Cold comes back in September 2000. Then you're like, okay, right, gotta be Stone Cold versus The Rock for WrestleMania, right? And eventually that's how it came down. I mean, obviously, I've talked about this in previous videos, so I won't talk about it too much, but of course, you had Austin win the 2001 Royal Rumble, The Rock beat Kurt Angle for the WWF Championship in No Way Out, and now here you go. You've got it, The Rock versus Steve Austin for the WWF Championship. Now, this is probably of all parts of the build-up, this has to be the best part of the build-up. I mean, so it was, and I nearly forgot about it because I didn't forget about the segment, but I forgot about the segment that took place on SmackDown. I mean, I could have swore it happened on Raw, but when I was researching, I realised it actually did happen on SmackDown. So, if I'm not mistaken, it was 2 Smackdowns before WrestleMania 17. So now you've got in a locker room, you've got Stone Cold, and you've got The Rock, moderated by Jim Ross. And I gotta say, like, backstage sit-down interviews are probably one of my favourite things in wrestling. I mean, they just have a different feel to them, and it's just kind of different seeing in that environment where they're not playing to the crowd and things like that. And it just kind of helps make the match feel more legitimate, like kind of makes it feel like more of a sporting contest. I mean, I think NXT's done this a few times. I think they've done it with they did it with Joe Nakamura. I remember that very well. I think they've done it with Joe and Balor. Recently they did it with Kairi Sane and Shayna Baszler, and then even WWE's done it a few times. I mean, I think they did it with Brock Lesnar and Samoa Joe, and they build up their match and things like that. But I think it's something that just always works. Always works. I think it really does. I think it just brings it legitimacy. And I'm so glad Jim Ross was the one to be the interviewer on this one, because I feel like if they had like Michael Cole or who else was there at the time, Coach or Kevin Kelly or someone like that, it just would not have had the same effect, in my opinion. I mean, because obviously Jim Ross has a lot more credibility than those guys. And yeah, they were just talking about the match. I mean, one thing I absolutely loved about this was The Rock's demeanour was totally different. I mean, he wasn't out there making jokes and all that, making puns and all that, making fun of his opponent. And he also wasn't talking in third person this one. He wasn't saying, The Rock says, The Rock is, The Rock does, etc. When he was talking about himself, he was referring to himself as me, myself, I, those sort of things. So obviously, we were talking about how The Rock grew up in the industry and all that. It's in his family and all that. Talking about Stone Cold's big comeback from the injury. Both were talking about how they respected each other, but they don't like each other. But they know they bring the best out of each other. And probably the most memorable line of this entire segment was there. Stone Cold's memorable. I need to beat you, Rock. I need to beat you more than anything you can ever imagine. And obviously, looking back now, that was a clue, I think. I think that was a clue of what was going to happen at the main event of WrestleMania. So Austin was outright saying he had to beat The Rock. This was do or die. He must win. He would do anything to win this match. And of course he did. That's exactly what he did when he sold out of Vince at the end of the match. So, and it's one of those things, if you're watching at the time, and this segment could not have got you excited for Stone Cold versus The Rock at WrestleMania 7, what was wrong with it? You possibly have no soul. I mean, awesome segment. I really loved it. Now, coming in at number 2, we're going back to 2000 this time, and it's the Smackdown right before Backlash 2000. Stone Cold returns and destroys the DX Express. What is the DX Express, you ask? Well, basically, a big luxurious tour bus that DX and then later the McMahon Helmsley faction were travelling around in. Pretty simple, really. So, obviously, this time period, early to mid 2000s, so we're going to Backlash 2000. For me, this was probably around the time, my peak time as a wrestling fan. I mean, probably have the most fondest memories of watching wrestling around this time. I mean, obviously at the time I was, let's have a think, 13 years old, so yeah, this is probably the peak of my fandom. I mean, obviously, wrestling was just so hot at the time, it wasn't even funny. I mean, popularity over the last couple of years has just skyrocketed. A lot of people I knew were watching wrestling, and it was great. I mean, obviously, nowadays I barely watch the WWE, but back then, I didn't dare miss a show. I really didn't. I mean, you had to watch Raw, watch every Smackdown. We even watched Sunday Night Heat, believe it or not, in those days. So if I remember right, UK schedules, Raw was Friday night, if you remember that, on Sky Sports. And then Sky wanted to have Smackdown on a Saturday morning, about 10, 11 o'clock maybe in the morning. I can't remember the exact time, so there was Raw. So you'd watch Raw on Friday night, then you'd watch Smackdown on Saturday morning. Then they had Sunday Night Heat on Channel 4 about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it was. And of course, it was all the mega pay-per-views I had. I was constantly playing the video games, so it was like, I think WWF Smackdown 2 had just, Smackdown 1 had just come out at the time. The THQ one, that was a pretty good game. I mean, obviously, it doesn't really hold up now, but at the time it was a pretty exciting game. Had me WWF action figures, and that's right, the Jack's Bone Crunching series at the time. So, yeah, I was just a massive WWF fanatic at the time. And obviously, I just absolutely loved the build-up to this. So, this has really revolved around The Rock chasing Triple H for the WWF title and the McMahon Helmsley faction. Vince had screwed The Rock out of the WWF Championship at WrestleMania in a shocker. I think most people expected The Rock to win the WWF Championship at WrestleMania 2000. But in my opinion, having this extra month's build-up for this Backlash match was awesome. So obviously then after that, so on a number of occasions, McMahon Helmsley era had the numbers game on The Rock, beating him up 2-on-1, 3-on-1, 4-on-1, etc. I believe at some point in the match, Shane was appointed the referee, and Vince had put himself in Triple H's corner, And then I think it was on the same Raw that Jericho kind of didn't win the WWF Championship. Linda McMahon, who was obviously portrayed as a babyface McMahon in the McMahon family, was often trying to mess with Vince's plots and all that. Pretty much stated that The Rock was outnumbered, and that she was going to put somebody in The Rock's corner, and she announced that person to be Stone Cold Steve Austin. What a pop! If you've seen that when Linda announced The Rock, because that was on Raw, when Linda announced The Rock, Stone Cold as being The Rock's corner, the pop was absolutely insane. I mean, absolutely insane pop. And yeah, obviously fans were so excited because, save from a brief interview with Jim Ross in his home after he had neck surgery, we hadn't seen Stone Cold on WWF television since Survivor Series 1999, when he got run over by a car, because obviously he'd been recovering from spinal surgery. So what a way to bring Stone Cold back into the fold, and then obviously build up to an episode of Smackdown where The Rock promised that Stone Cold Steve Austin was here tonight. And obviously, instead of having Stone Cold come out in the very first segment, they spent the entire that Smackdown episode teasing Stone Cold. Where's Stone Cold going to be? So they had the McMahon Helmsley faction chasing them all night. Austin setting up a load of daft stuff to book them out. First, they had someone on a page and on his beeper, and what's a beeper, kids? Look it up. 316 on Triple H's beeper. Then they did a thing where it sounded like they heard Stone Cold's, I mean, you probably don't know what I'm on about, but his WWF aggression theme. So Triple H opened the door, but it was actually a boombox playing, so Triple H smashed that. And then Shane found a cardboard cutout, and it was kind of hilarious when Shane freaked out and started acting like a tough guy beating up the Stone Cold cardboard cutout. And I think he did where Austin had one of them trip over a load of empty beer cans in a room. And did they have a rattlesnake as well? I think they had an actual rattlesnake as well, but I'm not certain about that. So build up to the very last segment of the night. Obviously the McMahon Helmsley were calling bullshit on The Rock, and then The Rock said, Stone Cold's here. And then he looked at the old Smackdown Ovaltron, and there was Stone Cold Steve Austin on the Ovaltron on the outside. But he was in a big forklift type thing, so it was like you saw Austin had been out in the parking lot all night, and then Austin cut a promo about whose side Stone Cold gonna be on in Backlash, and Stone Cold was always going to be on the side that he was always on, and that was his. I mean, the crowd are absolutely eating this up, by the way. And I think he talked about how some people are good at construction, some people are good at making things at hand, but what Stone Cold's good at is destruction. So yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, it was one of those like lift things where he had a big massive block, and then he drove it over, dropped it onto the DX bus. The bus started exploding and all that. He just really tore the DX Express up, and that was to send a message to the McMahon Helmsley faction. What a way to go off the air! And if you saw this segment, you had to be like, if you weren't already excited for the Rock Triple H Backlash main event, you damn sure it was now. I mean, obviously Backlash 2000, one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time. And the build-up of this match, and this moment with Stone Cold was just epic, absolutely epic. So obviously this was a brief comeback for Austin. He wouldn't make his full time, go back to September. But I think it was an absolutely genius way for the WWF to not bring Austin back properly, but just keep him in the fans' mind, just to make sure the fans don't forget about old Stone Cold, because the WWF was chugging along nicely without him. But he didn't want the fans to forget about that old Texas rattlesnake. And this moment, awesome moment, and just an awesome time in the business. So that is number 2. So in 19 years of SmackDown's existence, there's been a lot of moments. So what is the number 1 moment? And for me, you can simply title this one, Cactus Jack is back. So January the 13th, 2000. And again, in the year 2000. So ironically enough, on this list, three of the moments would be before the brand split. So obviously, again, looking at memories of my youth, the year 2000, unbelievable time again. I mean, and this for me, Attitude Era, this Triple H Mick Foley storyline from the end of 1999, into 2000, one of my favourite angles of all time. So I talked about this more in a Fave 5 rivalries video, so I'll briefly summarise the rivalry again, but I won't go over it in too much detail. I'll mainly focus on this moment right here. So obviously Triple H and Stephanie got married on the show. Then it turned out to be a ruse, and they were in cahoots the whole time. So Triple H hadn't in fact drugged and married Stephanie. Stephanie married Triple H of a free will. Obviously Vince and Shane went off. Then the McMahon-Helmsley era happened. So they were running the show for a little while. Being big dictators, really being dicks and ruining wrestlers' lives. Mick Foley, in an offhand comment, told McMahon-Helmsley era that the McMahon-Helmsley era sucked. Then they set up the match of The Rock and Mankind the next week on Raw. Mankind was fired from the WWF for about 2 weeks, but he was all over the show. So within that time, so DX and Triple H repeatedly humiliated Mankind over and over again. They took his job away from him. Then they had this fake Mankind insult him and impersonate him and embarrass him in front of the world and all that. Then eventually they did a thing on Raw where The Rock had all the WWF superstars around the ring, threatened to walk out in the McMahon-Helmsley era until they reinstated Mick Foley, which they did. And that led to a big match on Raw with DX versus The Rock and Sock Connection in the APA. But the other members of DX and The Rock and the Acolytes all brought them back, leaving Triple H and Mankind in the ring together. But Triple H beat up Mankind, absolutely bloodied up and battered him, and that's how Raw went off the air. So that all led to this epic moment in Smackdown, and for me, I just love this moment. So Triple H comes out with the fake Mankind, again berates the fake Mankind again, and further embarrassing Mick Foley. Then the real Mankind comes out and cuts a promo and tells Triple H, "What the hell do you want from me? You've ruined me. You took my job away from me. You embarrassed me every week, and now you destroyed me on television." So he said. So then obviously he started putting over Triple H, saying how he was the best in the business, how he was the World Wrestling Federation champion, how he was the game. And Triple H's reactions, yeah. He was an absolute smug bastard in this one, he really was. You just see how it's like, yeah, you're damn right, I'm the game. So, and obviously the more Mick Foley was putting him over, the more smug and arrogant he looked. He just had one of those faces, one of those faces you just want to smack. So, then Mick Foley further up Triple H's ego when he said, "Mankind's a lot of things. Mankind's an entertaining son of a bitch. He's a great character for the kids. He makes a pretty damn good offer these days. But one thing Mankind is not, and that is ready to face Triple H in a street fight at the Royal Rumble." And this probably just made Triple H's day. So he was like, then he goes, "I am going to name a substitute for that match. I'm going to name him right now." So at the time, you weren't quite sure what he was going with this. So after a pause, he says, "I think you know the guy." Took the mask off, opened up his Mankind shirt, took the tie off, and underneath he had Cactus Jack's shirt. So Cactus Jack was back. So what they did, so they humiliated Mick Foley over and over again. They pushed him to the point where the only way he thought he could fight back was to metamorphosize back into Cactus Jack, the crazy, psychotic, sadistic side of Mick Foley. So obviously in 1999, Mankind involved with a good character for the kids. He was more of a lovable, humorous character. But that wasn't really how Mick Foley made his career. And of course, 1999 was the year that Mick Foley's body really started to break down. I mean, obviously after all the stuff he'd done in his career, it was starting to really wear on him. And he just physically couldn't do what he used to do anymore. I mean, he was 34 years old at the time, but he'd punished his body so much that he was already broken down. And he knew the end was coming, and he wanted to end his career with one last big angle as Cactus Jack. So Cactus Jack was back, and I've got to give it to Triple H as well. I mean, he could have just laughed it off and go, "Who's this fucking idiot?" But Triple H saw it, though he was scared shitless. Like, he was like, "Oh fuck, what have I done? Not this guy, not this guy." So obviously Triple H's reaction was just great. I think Triple H was able to scarf it, but Cactus Jack laid a beating on the fake Mankind, and he's just like, oh god, yeah. I mean, yeah, this moment was an absolute classic moment. one of my favourite moments of all time. Not just SmackDown history, but it's got to be in, and that might even be in the top 10 segments of WWE history, in my opinion, which is that good. I mean, and obviously now the whole Triple H Mick Foley match at the Royal Rumble had a completely new layer to it now, because it wasn't Triple H versus Mankind anymore. It was Triple H versus Cactus fucking Jack. And that was just so exciting to me at the time. And that's a wrap, guys. So that's another Fave 5 done and posted. So next 2 weeks are going to be, obviously I think I've said it before, but I'll just say it again. Next 2 weeks we're going to have SmackDown episodes and SmackDown matches. Not sure which order it's going to be. I'll decide later on. Then I think after SmackDown 1000's out the way, I'll do Fave 5 WWE women's matches right before the Evolution pay-per-view, and then obviously November it'll be Survivor Series based. But I am still open to suggestions, so if you have any more suggestions, post them in the comment section by all means. And until next time, guys, peace.